All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We've got a couple really great recipes that we're excited to share and just kind of talk about, share how we celebrate in the month of March in our home. I'm Tony Quintana, plant-based eating program manager with Animal Protection of New Mexico.
I'm Mickey Quintana, his wife.
The brains behind a lot of our cooking in the house. And so she helps a lot.
Yes, a cook.
Absolutely. We'll just go ahead and get right into this. So what we are sharing this evening is an Irish-inspired plant-based feast, basically. So we're going to share the recipe for our Irish beefless stew, some corned beef and cabbage, and some Irish soda bread, two versions, like a traditional version and also a sweet version. And we're going to share some cooking demonstrations for all three of these. And then we'll just talk a little bit about some other ideas, some other sort of inspiration for Irish-inspired cooking, and answer, Q&A at the end. And as you can see, we like to take the opportunity each year in March to celebrate and learn about, Mickey's heritage and all of that stuff. So
that ancestry there. Lots of leprechauns and fairies and folk tales and such.
So let's get cooking. As you can see, this is our oldest. He's now 14 and taller than me, and thinks he's an adult now, but he's been making Irish soda bread since he was roughly, I think he's 5 in this picture. So
yeah,
we've been making Irish soda bread in our house.
Yeah, that's kinder or first grade.
A long time.
Yeah.
So it's just fun to share, how long it's been that we've been doing these and veganizing our recipes over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So starting off with the Irish beefless stew, I think this is like everyone's favorite in our house.
Yeah.
I really like this a lot more and more each time I have it. I love the thick
gravy. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
And the depth. I don't even have a vocabulary to describe the broth. It's like depth and I'm not even sure.
Way to be honest.
I feel like when you look at the recipe, it looks like, oh my gosh, that's so many ingredients. Like it seems like a lot, and it really does, but try not to, get overwhelmed.
Right.
Because it just kind of adds up, but it's not like a whole lot.
Yeah. It does look like a long recipe, but it's really an easy recipe. Mm-hmm. It's not intimidating.
Right. It's not intimidating.
Yeah.
As you will see when we share the cooking demonstration right now. So we're going to be making Irish beefless stew. This is a very simple recipe. We have all the ingredients that we need to make it right here. Most of them are simple ingredients that you probably have lying around your house right now. So starting with the vegetables, we're just going to use 2 carrots, 2 ribs of celery, 8 ounces of mushrooms. I cheated and went ahead and bought the kind that were already sliced. If you like them bigger and chunkier, you could buy the whole ones and just quarter them. We're going to use 2 potatoes, 1 onion, and 4 cloves of garlic, or however much you want. As I always say, never let a recipe tell you how much garlic to put. You measure that with your heart. Then we're going to use 2 tablespoons of oil. Any type of oil will work. We're using grapeseed oil today. Grapeseed oil is great because it has a really high cook temperature. Then you need a vegan stout beer, 4 cups or 1 quart of vegetable broth, 1 can, a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, 1/4 cup of flour, and any type of flour should work just fine. And then some spices. We're going to use a teaspoon of thyme, 2 bay leaves, 2 teaspoons of brown sugar, and then salt and pepper to taste. You can just adjust that to your taste preferences. And lastly, for the vegan meat replacement, we are using Gardein Homestyle Beefless Tips. These are my absolute favorite to use in stews, any type of beef stew. This is sort of my go-to, but particularly for this recipe, I think it's the perfect addition to it. You could choose to omit the vegan beef and just make a delicious beefless stew with all the other ingredients. Again, like I said, I like to add it because I feel like it adds a lot. Some people feel like the mushrooms is enough. That sort of gives that texture, that sort of meaty texture for the beefless stew. I like to do both. Some people feel like both is too much and you want to go with one or the other. So again, as with any recipe, just adjust it to your preferences and enjoy. All right, so now we're going to get in the kitchen and get cooking. All right, so we're just going to start with medium heat, and we're going to heat the oil. And then we're going to add the celery, onion, and garlic and saute that. Went ahead and chopped these. We're just going to saute those over medium heat for about 5 minutes. In the meantime, we can chop the rest of our vegetables. All right, so now that these have been sauteing for about 5 minutes, the onions are starting to look a little translucent. That's the time to go on to the next step. So what we're going to do is just add the flour. We're going to add the flour to the pot, mix it well, to kind of coat the veggies. Then we're going to mix in half of the broth. Scraping the bottom. This sort of makes like a roux. This is how we get the stew to be nice and thick. Then we're going to add in the beer at this step because it will foam up, so we have room in the pot for it to foam and then come down. We're going to add in the rest of the broth. We're going to add the tomato paste and stir that in. Then we're just going to add the remaining vegetables. And we're going to add the spices. And then we just want to let this simmer for about 15 minutes until the vegetables are cooked all the way through, until the carrots are fork tender. In the meantime, while the stew is simmering, we're just going to cook the beefless tips by sauteing them in a separate pan. So we've heated the pan on medium heat. Going to add a drizzle of oil. Just add the frozen tips to the pan. And this is just per the package instructions. We're just going to cook them for about 3 minutes until they're hot throughout. You do want to stir the stew occasionally as it simmers. And personally, I like to break some of these up so they're into like smaller chunks. Again, this is totally your preference. If you want big chunky pieces or smaller pieces. When those are done cooking, we just turn off the heat, let them sit until the stew is done, and then the last step is to add them into the stew. All right, so the stew has been simmering long enough. The vegetables are cooked. We just turned off the heat, and the last step is to just add in the beef tips that we cooked separately. Lastly, we'll just remove the bay leaves, and then this is ready to serve, piping hot.
Looks really good. Glad there's a little bit of leftovers.
Yeah, my mouth is watering, and we've been eating this like a lot. Mm-hmm. So it kind of doesn't get old. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's pretty simple, as you could see. It's just a lot of just adding ingredients in the right order, basically, is kind of all you got to do there. Mm-hmm. So if there's any questions or comments, please do share. Let's see.
The alcohol in the beer cooks off. So right. No worries there as far as feeding it to kids.
Yeah, all the alcohol will cook off. It's just for that depth, the flavor depth, right?
It gives you that nice dark color too.
For sure. And on that note, so a little note about beer, wine, etc. A couple years ago, Guinness was actually not vegan or technically plant-based. They used of their filtering system, they used basically a fish bladder. They have changed that as of a few years ago. I forget when exactly that change went, but it was really nice because, you know, I'm not sure what other stout beers would go good in this recipe or for this cooking. So we don't have to worry about that. We can just use Guinness like we've been doing. Yep. But if you do want to look at other drinks and see if they are vegan or not, vegan friendly or plant-based, there's a website called Barnivore, and that's what this screenshot is at the lower right. That's just a screenshot of the website, barnivore.com. And you can just search their database for any type of, virtually any type of beer, wine, or liquor to see if it is vegan. And then they'll have like a explanation as to how they came up with that information. And there's more information about whether or not the drink is vegan. Mm-hmm. There was a question on how many people are served in this recipe. This will serve, we decided 6 people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the recipe card itself, it says how many people. And pretty sure it's 6 because the 4 of us all ate, and then we had seconds.
And then the 4 of us ate. Did you and Teen have seconds that night?
Yeah.
And there was some leftover. So it might even be 6 to 8 people, depending on how big your bowls are.
Right. Yeah. 6 comfortably, probably 6 to 8. So you could have it, or it's the good thing about soups and stews is they're great as leftovers because they kind of marinate. Sometimes they taste better reheated the next day, to be perfectly honest.
This one's good both times, though.
It's good both times. Yes. Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you for that question. So moving on to the next one, we're going to talk about corned beef and cabbage. So we used jackfruit to mimic the corned beef. And it's funny because I feel like when people are cooking with meat, with animal flesh, it's like this contest to see how tender we can get it, how soft can we get it. And then when we're like recreating meat with plants, it's like, is it too soft? We want to make it more like chewy texture. So it's kind of funny, but I feel like it's the exact texture of like the softest, most tender beef you've ever had, right? Kind of think of it that way. So yeah, with that said, again, this one kind of looks a little intimidating, but it's just a lot of spices really. And you know, one of the main ingredients that gives it a lot of the flavor is the pickling spices, which are pictured on the bottom left there. And we just ordered those off of Amazon. I think they were like $5 or $6, and there's enough to make lots of batches of this. So it's one of those things that's like, we don't carry all the different spices like mustard seed and just lots of, you know, whole like peppercorns and stuff like that. But this was just a perfect mixture of all those things.
Yeah.
And with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into this demonstration.
So we're going to make Irish-inspired corned beef and cabbage. Obviously, we're not using beef because we're making this all plant-based, so our replacement for the corned beef is going to be some jackfruit. We're using some unripe canned jackfruit to get that texture, and we're going to flavor it with all of these spices to get that depth and that flavor that the corned beef gives us. So these are all the ingredients that we need. Lots of spices, but other than the spices, it's a very simple recipe actually. We're obviously using a good amount of cabbage, and then just a little bit of other vegetables, some celery, carrot, potato, and onion. Really just a little bit of those because we really want the corned beef and cabbage to be the star of the show. And then we're going to use a little bit of oil to saute our vegetables. We're going to use some vegetable broth to cook it in. And then this wide combination of spices. So starting with these pickling spices, which kind of have a little bit of everything that we want in it. You know, dill, mustard seed, peppercorns, bay leaves, etc. And we're going to use that to kind of really spice it up. We're going to add some onion powder, an additional bay leaf just to bring out more of that flavor, some smoked paprika, and then these are just optional to taste. You can add some salt and pepper and or some red pepper flakes or crushed red pepper. I like a little bit of that on top to just kind of top off my bowl. And that's it as far as the ingredients go. So let's get into the kitchen and get cooking. Okay, so first we're gonna prepare our jackfruit. All I've done is taken it out of the can and rinsed it. So this is what it looks like out of the can. So then all I'm gonna do next is just remove some of these inner sort of pits, just because we don't really like the texture those have. And then we're just breaking this up a little bit. And you can see it kind of starts to look like sort of the shape and texture of corned beef. You can do this with a fork or other utensil. I like to just get in there with my hands. I just find it much easier and quicker. And that's it. Here's our jackfruit corned beef. And I'm gonna give it one more quick rinse and then just put it aside until we're ready to add it to the pan. So I've gone ahead and chopped the carrots, celery, and onion, and heated up a little bit of oil in a pan. We're just going to start off by sauteing these veggies. All right, so now that these have been sauteing for about 5 minutes, the onions are starting to look translucent. Now we're going to add in the vegetable stock. We're also going to add in the jackfruit. And these spices. We're just going to bring this to a boil, then put it on low, and we're going to simmer it for 30 minutes. While this simmers, we can chop the cabbage and potatoes so that that's prepared and ready to add in when the time comes. All right, so this has been simmering for 30 minutes, giving the jackfruit, letting the jackfruit really soak up that flavor. So now we're just gonna add the cabbage and potato. See how we cut it into sort of little pieces there. Just mix it well, and then we're just gonna let this cook for about another 15 minutes or so to cook the cabbage and potatoes. All right, so this has been cooking for about 20 minutes, and the cabbage and carrots, potatoes are all cooked through. Lastly, we just want to remove the bay leaf, and this is ready to serve. I wish Zoom sort of had a feature where you could smell what was going on.
It smells really good.
Because it's, yeah, once those spices hit the pot. And by the way, in the video, when I say pan, I mean pot. And earlier when I said it sort of makes a roux, I meant it does make a roux, you know. Oh, and Otis decided to join the webinar, I guess. He wanted to talk about
corned beef and cabbage.
What was I saying? Yeah, so the spices, oh my gosh, they bring just so much aroma to the kitchen there. And then it's pictured with a little bit of the red pepper flakes on top. But do proceed with caution, because just the like pickling spices alone, it kind of has what people would say a tang or a kick or something like that. It's got a little
bit of a spice in
something, you know, when you put like a lot of pepper in your food, and it's kind of like, so if you're sensitive to spicy foods, definitely taste it before you go in with some red pepper flakes or something like that. All right, and now let's talk about this Irish soda bread that we serve with both of these recipes that we just said we can't go without this.
I'm a big bread fan, especially with soups and stews. So this one is very easy, very little ingredients, and high payoff. So
right, and we, like I said, we've been making it for years and years. A lot of the we like to make it with this recipe. It's like the perfect amount for the four of us. Basically, we can each get like one good size slice, and then maybe there's like one,
like a half
more slice that we can share or whatever. But it just seems like it's the perfect amount to complement our meals, you know, for four people. That's why we like this recipe.
But I have made it with about 4 cups, and it makes a much larger boule, whatever that term is. And that lasts a little bit longer. So it's easy to double, basically, if you're feeding more people, or if you want it already made and left over.
Without further ado, let's start cooking some Irish soda bread.
Okay, now we're going to make Irish soda bread. And most traditional recipes just have 4 ingredients: some flour, some salt and baking soda, and then buttermilk. And we're gonna make buttermilk with ACV and almond milk. So in our bowl, we have 2 1/4 cup, and most of the recipes we were finding, it's like 3 and 4 cups of flour. So you can make a really large loaf of sourdough bread, or you can cut it in half and have a smaller one. So we mastered the one cut in half. So 2 1/4 cups of flour, and this is 1 teaspoon each of baking soda and salt. Get it all in. And then we're going to put 1 tablespoon of ACV. Into our container. And 1 cup of milk. And we are using almond milk, because that's what we have right now. I have made it before with soy milk and it's been fine. And I should have done this first so that it could sit for a minute. So while we let that sit and do its thing, this is a Danish dough whisk that we use for all sorts of stuff, and it's really easy. So I'm just gonna mix our ingredients. Okay, so we've let this sit for a minute, and when we use almond milk, we find that it doesn't do the same kind of congeal-y thing with vinegar that soy milk does, but this has worked. We've done lots of rounds of making this recipe, and the almond milk does work. So I'm just gonna mix this together. And you want to just keep mixing. Oops, try not to spill. So it's gonna get like this, and just keep going. It's not quite in a ball yet, and you'll see there's still some loose flour on the bottom. Just keep going. Before I had this Danish dough whisk, I think I just used a fork or a wooden spoon or whatever I needed to just mix it up. But I didn't want a giant KitchenAid mixer, so this was my low-tech, low-cost find. When I get to the point where there's not really any flour left, it just needs to be sort of pushed together, go in with my hands and sort of knead the rest in. You don't need to do a lot of kneading. It's not like a yeast bread. Just a little bit to get it all together. Okay, so now it's all together. Doesn't look very pretty. So the side that kind of has these parts that were the top, I kind of pinch them and just kind of fold that onto the bottom until I get around like that. And then just put it down, and I flatten it a little bit. You don't want it to be too flat because it won't rise very big, but you do want to keep some bulk to it and shape it how you like. And then we just take a knife and we are going to score the top. And we're making an X. And this helps some of the heat get out. And that's it, our Irish soda bread. And so we'll cook this for about 25 minutes at 425 degrees, and then we'll come back and show you how it looks. So now we're going to do a variation of the Irish soda bread. We are going to do a sweet one that includes a little bit of sugar and some raisins. I think traditionally there was currants used, but we like it with raisins. I think maybe little chunks of apple might be tasty, or maybe even craisins could be good. You could throw nuts in there. You can really bulk this up. It's a really basic, the base recipe is really basic, but you can jazz up in many different ways. But I've got my buttermilk congealing and going. I've got my 2 1/4 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda and salt. And we're just going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. And we're going to start with a 1/2 cup of raisins, but you could add more if you would like. This is the 1/4 cup, so I'm just gonna do 2 scoops and a little, because I like the raisins. All right, and so we'll just mix that around a little bit. Get that in, and then this is a good time to check if your raisin to flour ratio is how you might like it, and to add more if you think you want more. And I'm going with more. I really, because I like what the raisins do in the warm bread, and they're soft and extra chewy. They're good. I like it. Since I'm making it, I'm putting more in. Okay, so we just pour our milk, our buttermilk in, and mix it up like before. Just keep going. You see I've got some congealing and some powder. Just keep going. And you can start doing that little fold to get it to come together in a ball. And then you just get in there with your hands like we did last time. Okay, so 3/4 cups of raisins might be too much because some of my raisins are falling out. I am going to shape it how I want it. You can see they're falling out. And take my pan. All right, so same thing. You want to flatten it a little bit, not too much. And then we're going to score the top with our knife, just making an X. Okay, and there you go. We're gonna bake it 25 minutes at 425 degrees, and then we'll come back and show you. All right, so both our Irish soda breads are out. We have our traditional sort of plain one and then our sweet one. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and recommend that you stay with a heaping 1/2 cup. I don't recommend going all the way to 3/4 like I did. Learn a lesson on camera or off. There you go. But otherwise, these are ready to cut and be served. They're really delicious with a little bit of butter on top. And some of us in this household really like the sweet one with cream cheese on top. So hope you enjoy.
That bread, like we said, can't really say enough about it.
Yeah.
And do take Mickey's advice on the raisins.
Yeah. There was a bit too many raisins on the top that I stuck on. The ones that fell out I stuck on, and they kind of like dried out in the cooking process. So like I said, I think if you want a little bit more, do a heap cup of raisins.
A heaping half.
A heaping 1/2 cup, yeah. I think if it were a bigger loaf, then you could go with more raisins.
Yeah. And then there was a question if the 2 milks we'd recommend are soy and almond. And I would say yes,
Yeah.
mainly because those are the 2 that we've tried that work really, both of them work really well. And oddly, I feel like maybe the almond works a little bit better for it to rise and fluff better. I'm not sure.
Interesting. I don't know. We've been making the loaves for quite a while for in preparation for this, and for some reason we ran out of soy milk and all we had was almond. So
yeah,
maybe we'll try it. But I have done it with soy milk before and been totally successful.
Right.
So yeah, they're both really delicious, and the raisin one we've been enjoying that at breakfast time lately.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and with the tofu cream cheese, that's our favorite cream cheese, but there's a lot of plant-based cream cheeses out there and lots of plant-based butters as well. All right. So that's kind of it for our recipes tonight that we're going to share in our cooking demonstrations. Wanted to talk about some resources, and then we could just talk about some other ideas that we cook that are just kind of simple things to mention. But on our website there, apnm.org/plant-based, we have more recipes, tons and tons that you can sift through. We have our vegan dining guide to help you find places to eat out throughout the state of New Mexico. And our podcast, Teach Me How to Vegan. That's our podcast that Mickey and I host, that you can just listen to us talk about recipes and tell jokes and laugh at each other.
Yeah.
We were laughing about the raisins, laughing about me talking, we have a lot of fun on there and share lots of tips and information. It's sort of like a how-to guide of how to go vegan. And lots more stuff to explore on the website there. So really quick, somebody asked if we're going to post the recipes. They are already posted on our website. They're up in the chat. If you scroll all the way to the top, I'll try and share them again. Yeah, I'm going to share the link once again. So it's right there, the most recent post in the chat. You can click on that link and that'll take you to a site where you can easily find the recipes that we shared tonight.
And then I think we had
Another.
Yeah, in the Q&A. So.
Oh, somebody asked, have you tried putting a little cinnamon in the sweetbread?
No, we haven't tried it in this round of cooking it.
So I've been making bread for like 3 weeks now because I've been wanting to get it perfect. I'm a perfectionist.
Because his wasn't rising very high. And then I made it and it rose perfectly. So he was a little disappointed in that.
But you did put a little too many raisins.
In the sweet one I did. But my plain one, but they rose right. So you don't want to flatten them too much is the trick. If you flatten them too much, then they don't rise all the way and then it's a short loaf and really dense.
I read too many articles.
Yeah, I think the cinnamon is a great idea in the sweet one. And start with maybe like a half teaspoon for that size of loaf and see how that does you. I think in the past I have put cinnamon in it. I don't know why I didn't right now. But
we're gonna try that next time.
Yeah, definitely.
Good idea. All right. And then you were gonna say,
oh yeah, I do some other things that are sort of, Irish inspired is just anything with cabbage. And we really, really enjoy I just cut up a cabbage and saute it in oil and put garlic powder and onion powder and a little bit of salt and pepper. And it is one of our favorite side dishes. We just absolutely love it. I particularly like it with mashed potatoes. But you could also do like roasted root vegetables, some potatoes and carrots, things like that. You could make a gravy to put over your roasted vegetables and have the cabbage on the side. Another idea is to do a lentil shepherd's pie. And there's lots of recipes for that. Maybe we'll find one that we recommend. I don't know the last time we made a lentil shepherd's pie.
It's been a little while, but they're really easy to veganize, even if because the lentils are sort of the main makeup of it. So there's millions of vegan,
there's a lot of
shepherd's pie recipes.
Lentil shepherd's pie.
Or you can just substitute like milk and butter for vegan milk and butter, whatever it calls for.
In the potatoes. Yeah. So, but that's another option. And then those are the main things like in our house, especially the cabbage. I just really love sauteed cabbage.
We eat it a lot.
Yeah, we do. So you can even just go very simple with sauteed cabbage and mashed potatoes and some Irish soda bread, and there you go. But the soups and stews tonight are also very, very delicious.
Yeah. We hope everyone has a good night and a fun March cooking up some of these delicious recipes. Have a great night, everyone.